Budget Committee Chairman Paul Ryan of Wisconsin. Mr. Chairman, let me ask this question. As we all wait to see how this divided government works, I completely understand and respect why House Republicans say we will vote to repeal the health care bill. You campaigned on it. It was a central promise, but you can't do it. You can't get it through the Senate. The president has a veto pen, even if you could. So what is round two? Will it just be a continued political confrontation, or will there be, okay, we can't get our way. Let's have serious conversations with Democrats about some incremental changes?
Well, if we use that standard to measure what we do on the House floor, whether we can pass it out of the House, out of the Senate and the presidency, then we ought to just go home. We do believe it's incumbent upon us to define ourselves with our actions. And that is why, like you said, this was a campaign pledge. We're fulfilling that pledge. And we really do believe this law should be repealed. So going forward, with respect to fiscal policy, I would argue healthcare policy is the biggest driver of our debt and deficits. And I just have a hard time seeing that we're going to come together on healthcare policy. It's because the architecture of the president's new healthcare law is so disastrous from our policy perspective, is so wrong, that I have a hard time seeing how we would agree to tinker around the margins. We really do believe this healthcare system should be replaced with a patient-centered healthcare system. We believe you can have universal access to affordable health insurance, including for people with pre-existing conditions, without this kind of a law takeover, without a huge government-run program, without all these tax increases and Medicare cuts. So hopefully we can get something on other areas of fiscal policy. Hopefully on discretionary spending, other entitlements, we can get some reform. My hope and goal is that we can find some agreement with the president on some things that get us in the right direction to get this debt under control. But his health care law, my guess is he's not going to agree with us, and we're not going to agree with him on that. And that one might just go to the next election.
All right, well, let's get to those other issues in a second. You say health care might go to the next election, but what about between now and then? Will you vote over and over again to repeal? Or is it possible we'll get gridlock on the budget process because a number of your colleagues have said let's defund, let's deny the funding for what the administration needs to implement the health care law. If the House doesn't put it in its budget and the Senate does, then you have gridlock. You either give in or what? We don't have a budget? We shut down the government?
Well, so budget is different than shutting down government. These are different things. Shutting down government, in your language, is discretionary spending. And that means, do we put riders in appropriation bills to defund aspects of this Obamacare, and that those don't get signed into law? Then we'll see what happens. So I can't answer the question of what the sort of budget showdown will be on discretionary spending. But on a budget, which is the budget resolution, we will be advocating for repeal of this health care law. But what I'm trying to say is, hopefully there are other aspects of fiscal reform, maybe even in the area of Medicaid reform, maybe in the area of Social Security, and hopefully maybe in the area of cutting discretionary spending. I would like to think we can get some agreement in those areas to make a dent in our problem, even though we just have such a difference of opinion on whether this new healthcare law should stand or not.
Answer the critics who say you're trying to change the referee in the middle of the game, or saying you won't listen to the referee in the middle of the game. Yes, CBO. Sir, you got an award just the other day. You said you're doing a great job at CBO. You said that, and I understand you disagree. You disagree with the Democratic bill. You disagree with their assumptions. But the CBO says the bill you're about to vote on to repeal the health care law would add $230 billion to the deficit. They are the referees. There are a lot of calls we don't like. We're both sports fans, but they're the referees today. How can you say, never mind?
So our quarrel is not with the CBO at all, or with their methodology. I have some differences of opinion on their methodology, but our quarrel is not with CBO themselves. Our quarrel is with the Democrats who wrote the bill that the CBO had to score. Here's how the CBO works. You put in front of them whatever you want to put in front of them, and they have to score it. And so what do they put in front of them? They put in front of them a bill that double counts Medicare money, that double counts Social Security money, that double counts Class Act money, that omits discretionary spending, that omits the doc fix. So if you take away all the double counting, all the money they didn't count, it's about a $700 billion deficit. The reason I say $700 billion deficit is because we asked CBO to look at this bill without all the gimmicks, without all the smoke and mirrors, and that was their conclusion. Let me say it this way. CBO, when they look at the debt, they can look at everything, not just this narrow piece of legislation. And they say that this health care bill increases the debt. So how can it be that this legislation reduces the deficit but increases the debt? The reason is because in this bill, which is scored, which gives you that score that you just mentioned, they have all this double counting, all these smoke and mirrors. That's not CBO's problem. That's the problem of the people who manipulated CBO by putting all these budget gimmicks into the legislation that they have scored.
I suspect Democrats will be saying the same thing about you in the near future. But let's move on to another issue. You're making a lot of new friends. You have 63 new seats the House Republicans picked up in the last election. Many of those new members are Tea Party members who say, no way, sir, we will not vote to give the government more lending authority, to raise the debt ceiling, unless they see a very serious and significant package of spending cuts attached to that legislation.
I agree with that.
How much money are we talking about?
Well, I agree with that. I'm not interested in negotiating through the media. I don't think that's a good strategy. But we didn't ask the American people to give us the majority to be rubber stamps for big government. We do have to get this thing turned around. And yes, I think this is an opportunity to actually get serious spending cuts and controls in place in order to prevent default.
How much are we talking about?
I'd like to think, I'm not going to get into that because I don't think it's smart to negotiate through the media. But we want something significant because this debt situation is really getting out of control. And we're not interested in rubber stamping all the spending that has taken place over the last 2 years. We want to get this thing turned around in the right direction.
I hope we spend a lot of time in the weeks and months to come deep in the weeds on the budget, and I mean that, going through specific programs, how is this going to affect. But I want to close today by asking you this question. You won't give me the number of spending cuts that you want to attach to raising the debt ceiling. What about, has the climate changed at all? You say you hope to agree with the president on many of these things. As we know, you didn't have any conversations with the president the first 2 years. Are you already in contact with the administration? Are you trying to work some of these things out? Or are we going to do this the old-fashioned way? Republicans have a proposal, you have your vote. The Senate Democrats have a proposal, they have their vote, and it takes months and months to get to what we all know is going to happen in the end. You're going to have to get in the room with the president, with the Democrats on the Senate side, and cut some sort of deal.
Well, the people I knew in the administration, Larry Summers, Peter Orszag, Rahm Emanuel, they're gone. So there's new people from the fiscal standpoint. I'm just beginning to get to know them. I did reach out to Jack Lew, the new OMB director. We've gotten to know each other a little bit. Gene Sperling was kind enough to call me to talk, and I'm getting to know Tim Geithner a little bit. So we are having those preliminary conversations. Nothing but good things come out of those from my perspective. And so, yes, look, I don't want to do nothing for the next 2 years. I hope what is going to happen is the president's going to say, look, I agree with you Republicans on A, B, and C. Let's go get those things done. But on X, Y, and Z, and his health care bill is probably one of them, we'll just have to agree to disagree, and that's fine. That's just how it's going to go. But I do believe, for the sake of our country, for the sake of our debt situation, that we're going to make some good dents on spending. Spending, after all, is the source of our problem. We've got to get started on it.
Paul Ryan is the chairman of the House Budget Committee, one of the most powerful figures in Washington at the moment. I hope you have those grown-up conversations as you just described, and we'll keep in touch as we go forward.
All right. Thanks, John. Nice to be with you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.